Welcome to Indiana Sports Beat Radio, brought to you by the Hard Truth Distilling Company in Brown County, Indiana.
So for the thousands in attendance and the millions watching around the world. Time!
Three on the way. Oh! It went in! It went in! And Indiana wins the ball game!
Know your role and shut your mouth, you jabroni!
Float game for the win! Ayla's gone. Goodbye. Touchdown, Indy. Woo! IU. America. They got a football team now.
It's pretty simple. I win. Google me.
You know that I'm the cream of the crop.
Now, from the Hard Truth Studios, here's Jim Coyle.
Good day, sports fans. How are you doing? Welcome to another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio here on this Tuesday. Very glad to have you along for the ride as always. Looking forward to talking to Mike DeCourcy here in this first hour. We'll get you caught up on all things that are going on. The Big Ten Conference rolls on, and plenty of other things to talk about on the sports docket. Some not really to do with sports either. Hope your week's going well. How about Indiana House Bill 108 that passed by the House, 69-25. This is involving the Illinois counties that are potentially looking to secede from Illinois and join Indiana. And I laugh because I'm like, what, are we into Civil War times? How is this even possible? I just find it a little humorous, but I guess that's just because it's something that we don't see happen. But just kind of odd. Just find it entertaining. There is a House Bill 1041 that is also that just has passed the House 7125, and that is the athletic trans ban that's already in effect, but this one extends it to college. The other one, I think, went to high school, so this would extend that to the college ranks. So, but I mean, it's there's all that out there already. You've got the NCAA now that has acquiesced to the latest administration's move on that. So that stuff seems to be taken care of. Then there's another one, though, that I find interesting. House Bill 11. No, this is Senate Bill 11. Social media for minors. This would require parental consent for those under 16 to use social media. And it would allow the Indiana Attorney General to sue those forums that do not comply. Now, hell, I think there needs to be a license for people to be on social media. You should have to pass some kind of competency, common sense test. I would love to see that. I think that should go for everybody. But, yep, how's your day going? Hope all things are well. The AP Top 25 out. Auburn still number one for the 7th straight week. Meanwhile, preseason number one, Kansas, they are out of the top 25. This is the first time in 4 years they have been out of the top 25. But things not going well in Lawrence for Bill Self and company. Last 2 seasons, not been great. It's just so ironic how NIL has caught up with certain programs. Things that make you go hum. Rick Pitino, he's got the Johnnies rolling, though. They are up 3 spots to number 7. They just defeated UConn. Michigan State moved up 6 spots to number 8 after their win over Michigan in Ann Arbor. Michigan last night goes to Lincoln to take on the Cornhuskers, and wow, you talk about one of the most the final score is 49-46. I don't think I need to say a lot more. That's Michigan getting another close win. I think that virtually all their last 6 wins have been by less than 5 points. That's nuts. Not sure. Oh, yeah. The fans love to see Rick Pitino come to Indiana. Hey, I'm kidding. He's one of the best coaches out there, but I'm not suggesting that he is an option or should be an option for Indiana. He's just too old. But let me tell you, for a start to bring somebody in and start something up. But he's got his team rolling. They're a top 10 team. They're going to probably be a number 2 seed if things continue like that. And I went back and watched the infamous Anthony Leal, Caleb First situation because I did not get a view of it from the beginning. And from appearances, I've got to say it looked like there was a kick to the area, unless the foot slipped, which is possible. But it looked like a kick to me. And if it was, then he probably should have been booted. I can't say it was a kick for certain. It certainly looked like it. And I mean, I know that's the battle, but see, there's certain things I just don't know that I've ever thought to do. That's one of them. Spitting and hitting somebody in the nether region. I'm not sure why that comes to thought. I don't know if it cannot be because you think it's not going to be seen. That's ridiculous. So yeah, I never understood I've never understood that mentality, that thought, but hope everybody's doing well. Glad to have you on the Andy Moore Honda hotline, and hope your day has started off well. Like I said, Mike DeCourcy is going to join us here in this first hour. Nathan Baird will join us in the second hour. Indiana still with a shot to make the NCAA tournament. And I'm looking forward to talking to Mike DeCourcy about that because he's a bracket analyst. He will give us the best position for Indiana right now on what he thinks, and he's usually pretty close with those guys. And Philip, I agree with you. If Leal had been ejected, I don't know that Indiana wins that game against Purdue. I agree with you wholeheartedly. And I'll talk to Mike about that one too to see if he saw that, but I don't get it. Why do you do that? There's a lot of things you can do. And yeah, it's a little odd. It's a little odd. We'll talk to Mike about it when he joins us. Glad to have you guys along on this Tuesday from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios. We'll take our first break. Looking forward to Mike DeCourcy joining us from Fox, BTN, and the Sporting News. On the backside of these messages.
At Ben Davis Chevrolet and Ben Davis Ford in Auburn, we're your one-stop shop for all of your automotive needs. We have the area's best selection of over 300 vehicles, including new cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Plus a huge selection of pre-owned vehicles in stock. And if we don't have what you're looking for, we'll find it for you. We also have top-of-the-line service and parts, plus a collision repair center, and we're competitively priced on everything. For sales, service, collision, parts, and more, we do it all. Come see us today or visit us online at BenDavisChevrolet.com and BenDavisFord.com.
Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game.
Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemoreSells@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today.
Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios, and welcome aboard Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, BTN, and Fox as their bracket analyst and senior writer for the Sporting News. How are you today, sir?
I am well, Jim. How are you?
I'm good. I bet you're staying busy with these brackets seemingly changing here right now a lot. There's a lot of people that are at the bottom, or a lot of teams at the bottom that are kind of churning to try to get in there and impress people like yourself, North Carolina, Indiana, etc.
Jim, I think there's more people trying to get out than trying to get in.
Well, it doesn't seem like that's very hard to do, but yeah, it is like a churn at the bottom. You kick one out and another one comes in, and they get kicked out. It's just a rotation right now.
Yeah, it's been interesting because you mentioned North Carolina, and they keep going out and beating poor ACC teams. And I'm a little bit redundant there, but they do still have Duke, so not totally. But this is a dreadful ACC. Having grown up watching ACC basketball, and
a little amazing.
And it really is, and probably a little bit depressing as well. It's atrocious, and so they go out and they beat Florida State, which, I mean, it's interesting because they're North Carolina. People stand up, right, and say, "Oh, wow, you're now winning games in the ACC or whatever." But it's no one's standing there saying, well, Drake won another Valley game. I mean, I know it's not exactly equivalent, but if the reason it's not equivalent is because Drake is good and has been having a good year all year, whereas North Carolina went out and beat a below average Florida State team that's 16-12 overall and ranked 67th, 88th at Ken Palm, 88th at Ken Palm. That's just not. There's nothing there. I mean, one of my principal arguments against expansion of the NCAA tournament field is this North Carolina team, which were there to be an expansion to 72 or 76 teams. At 72, they'd be one of the strongest candidates to be in the field of that last 4 grouping. If it were 76, they would be comfortably in. And you look at their page on the net rankings, and they are 1-10 still, 1-10 against quad 1 opposition.
I think Indiana's even better than that.
Oh yeah, and I have, as a result, I have Indiana higher on my out list, the next 4 out list. They are closer.
I've noticed that North Carolina is like second out on a lot of those, and I'm like, how's that the case?
Yeah, I mean, there's no defense for it, really. I mean, 1-10 against quad 1 is saying we can't beat anybody that's any good at all, not even a little bit good. Their results metrics are in the probably averaging around a 47 or so, which is an outranking. Their predictive metrics are better, but you add the results metrics with the quad 1 record, and I'm sorry, that is not an NCAA tournament resume. Now, if they go out and beat Duke, and they have them at home in the final day of the regular season, maybe I change my opinion about that if they can pull that off. But the interesting thing about that is in between now and Duke, they play Miami of Florida, which is 189, and Virginia Tech, which is 151, using Ken Palm's rankings, not the net, because it's more convenient schedule-wise. 189 and 151. They just got done running through 129, 105, 101, and 88. They beat all of those teams. None of those teams are anywhere near the field. They have rankings that are the equivalent of a mediocre Valley team, is basically what that is. And then before that, they played Clemson, which was 19 and lost. And they beat Pitt, which was 56, and they won that game by a point. And before that, they played Duke and lost. And before that, they played Pitt. And so anytime they played anyone anywhere near competence, they lose. Just about every time. And that's why you get that record of 1-10 against quad 1. They have no business being in this field unless they completely change it, but obviously with the win over Duke, but preferably also following that up with at least some achievement in the ACC tournament, although it's hard to achieve in a league that's as stacked with poor teams, not mediocre, poor teams as the ACC is.
Yeah, there's nothing to gain, really. I guess even when you win, sometimes you win, but you don't win a lot, so to speak. Indiana is a team that does have a couple of opportunities left, and man, they're like a cat with 9 lives. There is no way they're still in this thing, but yet they still are, and they do just enough to keep themselves hanging around. Huge win over Purdue last weekend. Yes. And the fact that they probably should have swept Purdue. If you look back at it, they could not finish that initial game out, and the Maryland game. And if they're able to do that, we're not even having this conversation. Indiana is probably in it as a bottom seed. I'm guessing at that point, if they had those 2 wins, that would be more than enough to do that. Even one of them might be enough to get them on the Mendoza line, but they have opportunities left. Going to Oregon is going to be tough. Cannot lose to Washington. You've got Ohio State at home and Penn State at home, although Penn State has that. Well, you have to win that game, or you get kicked out just on principle now. But they have the opportunities, Mike, and so are the opportunities there for them to get into the tournament?
Oh, absolutely. They have positioned themselves with those 2 wins to be in the picture. Like you said, you're 100% right. You can't lose Penn State and Washington. You can split Oregon and Ohio State and at least be in the picture. And now remember,
I think you can lose at Oregon. I don't think you can lose at home.
Well, if you beat Oregon and then lose at home, though, it's kind of, honestly, it would be a better win. So I think you could afford to lose the Ohio State game, although losing to Ohio State is crowding your own fields, creating your own traffic, because Ohio State, if you give them a home win, a road win against you, then that positions Ohio State perhaps in a better circumstance than you would be. So, but I do think that that they could afford to split those 2. So a 3-1 finish, that it probably puts you into mock fields like mine. Okay. But here's the thing that you have to remember is it also leaves you in that imperiled position near the bottom of the field that took a big hit last year when we had 5 bid stealers. Jerry Paul, my friend from CBS, coined that term many years ago, with teams taking automatic bids that they weren't supposed to get. NC State, UAB last year, New Mexico, all among the teams that would be considered bid stealers. There aren't as many potential bid steals this year. You're looking at certainly Memphis will be in the field. So if they were to not win the American championship, that would be a spot. Drake is a maybe. If Drake finishes out their regular season without any more defeats and then gets to the final of the Valley, that's a team that could possibly be a team that would still make the field by not winning their conference, possibly. Not a guarantee, but possibly. And then it would have to take a significant upset in one of the major conferences. Somebody like stepping up and winning the ACC that isn't Duke, or somebody that's really good like Ohio State winning the Big Ten and assuring their spot. So there aren't as many bid steal opportunities. So, but if you're 67 or 68, you're still vulnerable to that.
Yeah, and I wonder, are there doesn't seem to be a ton of bid stealers this year out there, but you never know until the end of the season because certain tournaments can change that.
Yeah, I mean, it would have to be something unusual like NC State did last year in the ACC, where they were clearly out of the field and made a run to and won the ACC the ACC tournament, and claimed the automatic bid. It would have to be something like that because other than Memphis and possibly Drake, there's nobody that is a lock to get in from the mid-level. If somebody stepped up and won the Mountain West, probably what would happen beyond San Diego State, Utah State, and New Mexico, probably what would end up happening is San Diego State would fall out more than likely because they're the very bottom of the field. And it would probably take them losing to someone they shouldn't lose to get some, I don't know, let's use San Jose State, my buddy Tim Miles, them winning the Mountain West championship, then maybe San Diego State falls out. So there's not a lot of that out there. I guess maybe a Xavier winning the Big East would be an example of something that would be in reach. Xavier's certainly good enough to do that. And I don't think there's any team in the Big East that would lose a bid in that process. UConn is doing their best to give up their territory, but they're still hanging around the 8-9 line. I don't think they're going to fall too much farther below that.
Nebraska, one of the teams that Indiana is competing with from within their own conference, they lost I think I'll call the Molasses in January Bowl last night. That score, I was like, the final score 49-46, and I was watching that game, and I'm like,
I did watch that game.
I was like, does that say second half? Really? It was just like, what are they doing? But Michigan is grinding like no team in the country. I mean, I think their last 7 wins have come with 5 points or less against virtually everyone.
I mean, it's amazing what they're doing in that sense. I mean, it doesn't help their KenPom ranking or anything. But at this point, I think it's more, well, of course, they lost the Michigan State game, but they lost that by double digits. But 1, 2, 3,
at home, no less.
5, 6, 7. Yes, 8. Their last 8 wins have all been by by 2 possessions or less. 8 wins in a row by 2 possessions or less. That's astounding. But they are really good in crunch time because they have Danny Wolf. I was asked yesterday who I would vote for Big Ten Player of the Year. Would it be John Tonje at Wisconsin? Would it be Danny Wolf? Who would it be? My candidates were Tonje and Wolf. I think there's some terrific players in the league, but those are the 2 that I think are the best candidates. I know that Vlad Golden scores more points than Danny Wolf, but I don't know how you watch them and don't come to the conclusion that Wolf is the best player on that team. The most valuable player, the best prospect. He's a phenomenal player.
He might be the best prospect in the Big Ten.
Yeah.
He just has skills for a 7-footer. This dude can handle the ball. He looks like he's got a little magic in him. With the ball, he's something. And he is going to be an NBA draft pick. And I would not argue with him as the player of the year in the Big Ten. I know that there's maybe some flashier players, but boy, he's going to get it done at the next level, I think.
I think he is going to I think he's going to be drafted fairly high as well, and I think he'll do well. I'll be interested to see what he looks like in an NBA game, but that skill, that ability to move, to defend. He's not an elite defender, but he is an elite offensive player, and he can move and become a better defender. He'll be able to guard on the perimeter in those ball screen situations and that sort of thing. Like I said, he needs to learn how to read those situations better in the way that he can read an offense. But he is just a phenomenal player, and what an addition for Michigan, making a run at the Big Ten title. Them and Michigan State right now having a nice little race. I think it might just be the two of them now with what's happened in the last few weeks. Wisconsin taking the home loss to Oregon put them in a difficult position to try to compete. Obviously, Illinois taking too many conference losses. It's a terrific, and of course, Purdue of late losing their losing streak has probably taken them out of the hunt as well. But what a great race it's going to be down these last 2 weeks.
Well, not only that, Mike, but this is going to come down to the last game of the Big Ten season, because Michigan and Michigan State play again in East Lansing. How they managed to do that was amazing to me, to play twice in their last 5 games. But the final game of the year for both of them will be against each other, and that's probably going to be to determine the Big Ten title. Like you said, I agree. Maryland with 5 and Wisconsin with 5 losses. 2 losses last or more than Michigan State with only 4 games remaining. I just don't see that changing that much. So I agree with you. But how about Maryland and Wisconsin for just slowly just moving up the ladder in the Big Ten? They put themselves in a great position to where they would have had a shot at the title. But I'm also surprised that there's only 3 losses right now at the top. I mean, I think that's a heck of a job by Michigan and Michigan State, both because Michigan State showed that they are susceptible by losing to Indiana. Michigan has shown they're susceptible more than once, but they have just been able to hang on and get it done.
Yeah, it's really cool. We had a decade ago, a little more than a decade ago, we had some phenomenal conference races in the Big Ten. 2012, as I recall, Michigan State was playing Ohio State, and Michigan needed Ohio State to win in order that I believe that all 3 of them tied for the title. And William Buford hit a 3-pointer at more or less at the buzzer to get Michigan into that title mix. So all 3 of them shared it. So Michigan had to root for Ohio State, and that made them champions. It was a great, phenomenal final day of the regular season. And then I remember as well, of course, the great race we had in 2013 when the Hoosiers earned a number 1 seed. Michigan was involved in that. Michigan State was in the picture. I remember going up to East Lansing and Victor Oladipo having a phenomenal game and more or less clinching the Sporting News Player of the Year award with his play in that game. We had some phenomenal races. And so for this one to come down in the first year of the expanded Big Ten to the possibility of those 2 teams playing on the final day, really, really would love to have that game. I hope it happens in a lot of ways. I'm not rooting against anybody else. I don't even know who either team off the top of my head plays in the interim, but it would be really cool to have those 2 teams play for the title, even if they each take a loss. So I'm not rooting for anybody. I just want them to have equivalent records going down to the final day and have that be a winner take all kind of game. That'd be really wild.
Yeah, as I look over the Big Ten standings, I've kind of shortened my list. I think only 9 Big Ten teams will get in. And to get that 9th team in, that's going to be either Indiana or Nebraska or Ohio State. I don't see 2 of
I think they all 3 still can make it without looking at the schedules.
Really? I mean, to say all of them getting in, I just think that
I think all 3 can make it. Absolutely. You have to understand. There's a couple things you have to understand. One, the bottom of the bracket being as poor as it is, there's a window for all 3 to not all 3 to make it, for 2 of the 3. Did I say all 3? I apologize if I did. I meant all three of them still have a chance. But
I agree with that.
No, they're not going to get 11 teams in the field. That would be highly unusual. Just as I don't believe that the SEC will get 14 teams in, but I firmly believe that they'll get 13 and no fewer than 12. But I believe the number that will settle for the SEC will be 13. So no, I don't think. Will
that be enough for Greg Sankey?
I don't think it will. No,
I don't
never
think
enough.
so either.
Never enough.
They'll probably have a meeting next week about guaranteed spots to get into the NCAA tournament.
Exactly. Hey, he's the one that's been pushing for an expansion of the field that I was lamenting before about North Carolina's candidacy. He's the one that's been pushing for that. And my line about that is, does he need to get 18 out of his 16 teams in the field? That's the best summation I can come up with. Does he need to have 18 out of 16?
Yeah, I was reading an article that someone went back and looked at, the last 10 years of the playoff scenarios.
I did that.
That was you?
Yes.
Perfect. And showed how it would not help the SEC, and sometimes it would hurt them.
Yes. Well, actually, I had done it back in November when they had their meeting. Do you remember the meeting between the SEC and the Big Ten?
No.
And so in advance of that, I wrote that. And then Stuart Mandel from The Athletic followed up with similar sort of confirming my research, so to speak, which is that if you guarantee 4 spots, then they're never going to give you a 5th. That's not going to happen. And there were multiple years in the course of that decade when both the Big Ten, under current membership, assuming that Washington and Oregon would have put together playoff worthy seasons, or USC or whatever in their previous, now as part of the Big Ten, but their records at that point, and assuming the same for Texas and Oklahoma, that they would have had in some years, multiple occasions, they would have had 5 bids. They averaged each of them 4 bids, and that's in a 12-team field. If you go to 14, I don't think you'd ever have a scenario where each did not get 14, get 4 teams in. A 14-team scenario, which I'm not against. Like, whatever number you think is good, fine. But one automatic qualifier per league, that's how it works. You don't get, just because the AFC North is the best division in football, the Ravens and the Steelers and the Browns and the Bengals, just because that's the best division in football, they don't get 2 playoff spots every year, Jim. They get 1, and then they get whatever they can get on top of that. And it's often been 2. It's never been 3, but they've come close a few years where it actually they had a shot at that. But that's how it's supposed to work. This guaranteed bid thing is not good for football, and it's not good for the conferences, because it takes away the actual suspense of, okay, who's it going to be? Like, if it's just 1, 2, 3, and 4 in the standings, I mean, where's the excitement in that? I will tell you, Jim, that this year, for the first time, there were games in the SEC involving, there was a Florida Ole Miss game that happened late. And Florida beat Ole Miss. It was a big win for the bubble teams, so to speak. It was a huge loss for Ole Miss. There was a game between Texas A&M and Auburn. And there was a game it was a non-conference game between Georgia and Georgia Tech. All those games had tournament or CFP implications. I watched all of them at the edge of my seat. In any previous year in the history of college football, I wouldn't have spent any time on any of those games because they wouldn't have mattered, because it would have just been decided who was going to the Independence Bowl. And why do I care about that? But having these games put me at the edge of my seat. It made me watch SEC football at a level that I hadn't since I lived there in the 90s in Memphis. I would have had no interest in those games. But the playoff and the suspense of who's going to get in and how is this going to affect the field changed everything. And how Sankey doesn't understand that as someone who is essentially a promoter of college sports. When you're a promoter, you have to understand what makes your sport popular, what makes people engage with it. How he doesn't understand that is absolutely beyond me. But then again, this is the same guy who 2 years ago said, hey, look, Ole Miss was the last baseball team into the college World Series thing, and they won it. So you should have more teams in the NCAA men's basketball tournament. As if baseball and basketball are the same sports. That's who we're dealing with.
Yeah, it's just me. There's no doubt about that. And I understand fighting for your league, but at some point you have to acknowledge that you're being a little overbearing and not a little, a lot overbearing and a lot ridiculous. But
it's not just about that, Jim. It is I like the idea of fighting for your league. That's what you're supposed to do. You try to make it better. And the SEC has done a wonderful job of making their league better in a lot of ways. But you're also supposed to make your sport more popular, the sports that you sponsor more popular. You're supposed to want people to engage with them, not just assume that they'll engage no matter what we put out there. That's not how any entertainment enterprise works. It isn't. Just because there's a Marvel movie out there doesn't mean people are going to flock to the theaters. If it's not a good one, if the people who like Marvel movies and those comic book movies don't think it's a good one, they're not going to come in the same numbers. When they make one that those people dig, they come in unbelievable numbers. So it's not just as simple as, well, whatever we put out there, people are going to watch, because they don't. They watch what's compelling. And the college football playoff, as it was constructed this year, and the season that led to it even more so, were compelling. Do I think they need to fix the seeding? Absolutely, I think they need to. I don't think that Boise State and Arizona State should have been the 3 and 4 seeds. That was not realistic. But they do need to figure out how to work on, if you're playing in a conference championship game and you win it and you qualify, how you can maybe not have to be punished for having played in that game relative to the others that you would play.
And it looks like they are going to fix the seeding thing, which is a little mind-boggling, because it was always, well, nothing can change for 2 years because this is nothing can change. Well, now the SEC and the Big Ten, but the SEC's, well, I think we could change this. So that's changeable. Well, you can't change the schedule. These schedules are set for 10 years. Well, the Big Ten needs a new schedule. Okay, let's create a whole new schedule. Oh, that one didn't work. Let's recreate another whole new schedule. It amazes me the things that were never able to be done before, when they actually need it to be done. Oh, no problem. Knock it out.
Yeah, I totally understand what you're talking about. There are things about college football that obviously can be repaired, but they have made massive improvements to the competition over the last few years. And I do agree with adjusting those seeds, yes. But I totally don't agree with multiple bids for any league, 2, 4, whatever. No, automatic bids is what made this tournament a real tournament. But make sure that everybody else has to earn their way in. Now, if you want to come up with a different way to designate how those teams get in other than a committee, I'm open to listening. If you can come up with a flawless system that incorporates 72 different computer rankings and you think that's the best, whatever. But I think that's a mistake. I think that the suspense that comes from, what will the committee do is, I think there's value to that. I really do. I think that people wondering what will happen is a very important component of that.
Absolutely. Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News Fox and BTN with us. We've got more coming up. As a matter of fact, when we come back, Mike's got the hire for the Indiana basketball coach. He just doesn't know it yet. He's going to spring that upon you. I'm kidding. But we've got lots more coming up, and we'll talk about that on the backside from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios right after these messages.
Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the hard truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. Ugly Grouper, located on beautiful Anna Marie Island, Florida, is the place to be, and not just because they have unforgettable meals, including locally sourced seafood. The Ugly Grouper has your favorite craft beers and cocktails, along with live music every day. The Ugly Grouper is family-friendly, able to host private parties, and has the biggest grouper you've ever seen. The Ugly Grouper is the place to be on Anna Marie Island, Florida. Tell them Indiana Sports Beat sent you. Go to theuglygrouper.com for more information. When it comes to apparel and promotions, Freethink has you covered, literally, whether it's 24 or 200 shirts for sports leagues, businesses, or groups. Freethink Apparel and Promotions can also create your very own merchandising store. Freethink Apparel and Promotions did it for Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and they can do it for you. Whether it's screen printing, embroidery, digital printing, promotional products, vehicle wraps, or anything else under the promotional line. See what Freethink Apparel and Promotions can do for you at freethinkapparel.com.
At Ben Davis Chevrolet and Ben Davis Ford in Auburn, we're your one-stop shop for all of your automotive needs. We have the area's best selection of over 300 vehicles, including new cars, trucks, vans, and SUVs. Plus a huge selection of pre-owned vehicles in stock. And if we don't have what you're looking for, we'll find it for you. We also have top-of-the-line service and parts, plus a collision repair center, and we're competitively priced on everything. For sales, service, collision, parts, and more, we do it all. Come see us today or visit us online at bendavischevrolet.com and bendavisford.com.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Tuesday. So glad to have you along with us, and throwing in your comments as well as Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Fox and Big Ten with us, and Indiana, while they are trying to maintain a spot in the, or find their spot in the NCAA tournament, they are also looking for a new coach along the way, which is a little odd, but it is what it is. And I don't know how much you can actually you can look from afar right now. There's not a lot of talking other than maybe some back channeling to gauge interest. Obviously, Dusty May, Michigan, we knew that they would be wanting to try to lock him up. I didn't know that would happen. I didn't think that would happen that soon. I thought that would go a little bit, but obviously that happened because he had made his decision, in my opinion. He's like, all right, I'm not going to take that other job. I'm going to stay here. And they made I'm sure, a nice, wonderful offer to keep him there. But that at least gets that out of the way. And that allows Indiana to move on to whomever their next targets are.
You remember I told you, 2 weeks ago, Jim.
Oh, you said Dusty was not leaving.
That Dusty would have a contract extension in place before everyone got to Indianapolis, that there was no way that Michigan was going to allow him to come to Indy and have that become the focus. For one, because they wanted to keep him because he's an excellent coach. For two, because they have an excellent team with great possibilities that could have been derailed by that very conversation. I know I've been around this long enough to have seen teams that were undermined by their coach either passively being involved because people are saying, you're going to come, are you going to come to our place, or actively being involved because they wanted to be either involved in the job or involved in the conversation in order to get them new contracts or extensions or whatever they might be looking for. So that was not going to be the case for Michigan. It's too well-run an athletic department for them to allow that to sit out there. I like you, didn't know that it would come that fast. I thought there would be a little bit more time to work through all of that. But credit to Michigan and to Dusty for making the decision as quickly as they did. And so the conversation in Indiana's case points to other things. Let me say this. I saw I think it was a Twitter response to this news on one of the other sites about the fact that they couldn't get Dusty, and one Indiana fan saying, "Well, I guess this means that our job isn't that good. And this is what happens all the time in these conversations, Jim. And it's kind of like this. It's like this apparatus that's built by the media for the media to an extent that, okay, here's who's going to get here's who Indiana is going to go after, and here's who's going to be interested in this. And I'll use Kentucky a year ago. It was very compact because they didn't have as much time as Indiana has. But the initial conversations, this happened on a Sunday night, the night before the title game, before Purdue played UConn. John Calipari announces his impending departure to Arkansas, or it's reported, not announced, but it's reported, and everybody knows he's going. So Kentucky's open. Then the names that others put out there, Scott Drew, Nate Oates, Dan Hurley in particular. And so what happens as a result of that? Well, some guy, look, the agents want that out there because they can use that as leverage to get whatever their coach wants, better facilities, more money, more years of security, whatever. And so what happens is those are put out there, and then their fans expect, well, why can't we get Nate Oates? We're Kentucky. Why can't we get Scott Drew? He's at Baylor. Okay, UConn, they won the title. They're playing Monday night for another, but hey, we're Kentucky. And then they don't get any of those guys. But meanwhile, what happens is, there's the report about Nate Oates being out, and there's the report about Scott Drew being out, and then there's the report about Dan Hurley being out, and all that creates traffic and interest, and none of it was ever likely to happen. It was almost impossible for any of those circumstances to occur. It would have required the administration at one or all of those three schools saying, you know what, if you want to go. And like, what were the odds of that? Where does that happen? I mean, it just doesn't happen. I mean, I can tell you schools that are locking up coaches that aren't even that good because they're so afraid that they're going to lose their coach and they're going to be embarrassed by that. So it's not happening with those three guys. So the fact that Indiana isn't going to get Dusty May or Brad Stevens to come says nothing at all about the quality or the possibilities of the Indiana job. What it says is those people already have good jobs. What you have to look for is the people that have good jobs, but not great jobs. I should have said it differently. Those people already have great jobs. Even though it's Baylor and they are not traditionally a power, he won a national championship there. He was going to be a number one seed the year before he won the championship. It's just there was no tournament because of the COVID. So he doesn't
won back-to-back titles.
Yeah, so he doesn't need to move to have the potential for greatness. And moving is a pain, I can tell you that. I just went through it. So it doesn't say anything about Indiana as a job. What it says is that eventually Indiana is going to have to figure out who's really interested and who really has a good job but not a great job, because Indiana is a great job. It's had a rough run. I'm not going to pretend it's not. It's been 25 years of some high points, but it's not been what Indiana would expect or what would be expected of Indiana. But if you get the hire right and don't worry about big names, if you get the hire right, somebody who can come in and realize the potential of Indiana basketball, because that's what they've done at their other stops. And I mentioned in my article, Grant McCaslin at Texas Tech, who squeezed
I was watching last night, Texas Tech, and who were they playing? I forget. Houston. Yes, I was watching that game and thinking, well, there's a possibility right there.
Yeah, I mean, I think TJ Otzelberger would be a absolutely grand slam choice if the buyout thing doesn't get in the way. But I certainly think it's worth figuring out, A, how much early is it? And B, if we're willing to pay Archie Miller $10 million to go away, maybe it's worth it. I mean, it's not my money. I don't have the money, but maybe it is because I'm telling you, he's here. He's at Indiana. He wins. I guarantee it. There's no doubt in my mind. He wins, and he wins big. Does he win a championship? I don't know, because I haven't seen him in that circumstance. You never know for sure until that coach gets in that circumstance, but he'll be in that circumstance if he gets to Indiana.
Winning championships are hard. I don't care who you are, where you are.
Yes.
It's
it's just difficult. All right, perfect. How many national titles has Kentucky won in the last 30 years now, or close to it? Or one?
Three. Three. They've won three. Three different coaches won. They won 96, 98, and 2012.
Their last span, they went a long time. Calipari won one. What is early on?
2012, his third year, or fourth year. Third year.
Yeah, and they had as much talent, more talent than anybody in the country, year in, year out. It's just hard. What Danny Hurley did is unusual, but this year you can see what they're going through. They're not going to win 3 in a row. Like the teams have changed, the rosters are different. So the fact that he was able to do that back to back in this era, I think is beyond impressive. But
you know what's go ahead.
I was just going to say, then you look at Kansas and Bill Self.
Yes.
And they've just fallen off the planet almost. I mean, it's not like they were 0 for 30, but it's not. They just fell out of the top 25 for the first time in 4 years. They were a preseason number 1. They've got all the talent. They're like Indiana. They have a high now budget, and they've got a lot more talent than Indiana probably has, to be honest with you, in the right positions. And the coaching has been there. So what's going on there? I just find it ironic now that they're in the NIL era and everybody else is equal, and Kansas has been relegated to being normal.
I think Kansas has sort of lost the path, so to speak. Over the last 2-3 years, they had built their program on development. That was the thing that Bill Self did probably better than anybody. Like every one of the great coaches that I've covered had something they did better than anybody. Like with Mike Krzyzewski, it was communication on the floor. His teams are more connected, work more connected than anybody else. With Jim Calhoun, it was scouting. He saw guys. Like he could see Shabazz Napier and see, okay, 85th player in his class, something like that. No, he's going to be an All-American when I'm done with him. That's what he was great at. And John Calipari was great at getting great players to combine to be the best team that they could be and to give up of their own individual concerns so that they could be a great team. And everybody has their strength. And what Bill did better than anybody was develop. He took Frank Mason from a guy who was barely recruited. He was unrecruited at the high major level and lightly recruited at the mid-major level and turned him into a national player of the year. I mean, that doesn't happen. Devontae Graham had signed at App State, I think it was, one of the state schools in North Carolina. I'm pretty sure it was App State. And at the last minute decides he doesn't want to go to App State. I think he took a prep school year. Then he shows up at Kansas and he becomes a first-team All-American. And then this last championship team had multiple players who fit that description. And there aren't any of those guys on this team. There's KJ Adams, who's been a regular since he began and is a wonderful young man and a team first guy, but a limited player. And at that point, he also, I think, is a little banged up. And then DeJuan Harris, their point guard, who was great with terrific players around him, but can't really find the way to elevate. He's not talented enough. He's not really improved his belief in his own game enough over the course of 4 or 5 years. So that's where they are. And then they have a bunch of transfers who either fit together or they don't. And in this case, the answer is don't. So that's where
Indiana fans are accustomed to that.
Yeah. So I think that you need to do what works for you. And I saw something yesterday where Rick Pitino said that you can't win a championship with high school guys now. You have to go into the portal. Well, the last 2 champions were built on high school guys.
UConn, Liam McNeely, Derek Queen. I mean, some of the best players in the Big Ten are freshmen. So Ace Bailey, Dylan Harper. There's a lot of guys out there, but I understand what he's saying. I'm up against it. I've got to take a break. I don't know if you have an extra 10 minutes this morning or not.
Yeah, I can do it. I can do it.
Okay. I'm going to talk about the IU job a little bit specifically. on the other side of this. We'll be right back with more from Mike DeCourcy from the Sporting News, Fox, and BTN. Gratefully to him giving us a few extra minutes right after these messages.
Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemoreSells@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today.
Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer.
Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue. And you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles.
Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Tuesday. Grateful to have Mike DeCourcy along, and Indiana, of course, on the slow ride to finding a new head basketball coach. And it's a difficult time of year to do that because everybody's busy. Everybody's working and under contract. So it's, it is a tricky time. And there are some names that fans would like to see that have been taken off of the table. There is the name that a lot of fans would like to see that I don't think is simply on the table for Indiana, and Chris Baird. I'm not arguing the fact of whether it should be or it shouldn't be. I'm just telling you that I just don't think it's going to be. I don't think that Chris Baird gets the opportunity this time around, at least for certain.
Well, if it makes them feel any better, they've lost 2 games in a row and are headed for number 3 tomorrow evening because they play at Auburn. So if it makes them feel any better, maybe if he's not on the table, that may allay their concerns a little bit.
And ironically, another old potential, I guess you would say, is right across the state there in Starks, Vegas, Chris Jans, who is doing a pretty daggone good job at Mississippi State.
He is. His team is outstanding. He has a former Big Ten player in his rotation, RJ Melendez, who who began his career, I should say, at Illinois as a freshman and showed a lot of promise and decided to transfer out. He's doing a nice job for them. They have a terrific team. They are higher on my list right now on my bracket than Ole Miss is. They are having a really strong season. They've swept Ole Miss, by the way, and it's a pretty impressive performance by the Bulldogs. And having been to both places, it's a tougher job at Mississippi State than it is at Ole Miss. I can tell you that because the Starkville is a long way from anywhere.
Yeah, Starks Vegas is a farce in and of itself, just to use that term, because there's nothing Vegas-like about Starks. They could just call it Stark and stop right there. It would be more descriptive of it. Some other names that are out there, Scott Drew, we talked about him earlier, and I don't know how much of a real possibility he is from a financial standpoint. He's gettable. His buyout is reportedly around $4.5 million. And Indiana is a very attractive job. I know that a lot of fans, they get off, like you said earlier, they get off. No, stop. Indiana is a sleeping giant with the right guy. If you get the right guy, he comes into a place that has as much resources as there are at any other place. So, but you have to have the right guy, because if you don't, it's not going to succeed. We've seen that. But that's the same for anything. I mean, Indiana football does not become Indiana football without the right guy.
Right. And one of the things I think that has to happen is that they have to hire a coach who fits all the necessary qualifications. And using an example, if Dusty had been available and he, let's say we're still at Florida Atlantic.
You mean like last year?
Yeah, like that, like last year. Not using a time machine, just saying, what if he'd hung on for another year? Then he would have fit all the qualifications. I still, like, people are bothered when I say that Archie Miller was not a bad hire. Archie fit all the qualifications except one. I know Arch and I really like him, but he's not a senator. And you got to have a little bit of that in you, maybe a lot of that in you.
He's not even a page.
He just isn't as comfortable with that aspect of it. That public connection, the ability to take all that attention on it. Places like Kentucky, Kansas, and Indiana and Carolina, you have to be good at that. It has to be part of who you are. And you don't have to necessarily be John Calipari in that department, because John Calipari and Mark Pope are both excelling in that element of the job in completely different ways. With Mark, it's much more a personal touch. With John, it was much more a lot of people at once. He had a personal touch, but it wasn't something he used often. Mark can go big public, but he's much more effective one-on-one. And so you have to be able to handle that. And I didn't think Arch was strong in that area when he was hired. I was worried about that aspect of it. And I think that's ultimately one of the reasons why it didn't take. And so you have to make sure that the next person is comfortable with that, as well as an extraordinary evaluator, an extraordinary salesperson, an extraordinary coach. There are so many things that go into being a successful college basketball coach. And one of the reasons why it so rarely works to bring in somebody who is an exceptional NBA coach or a long-term NBA coach is that the jobs are so much different. Even before NIL, I used to say that the actual coaching of college basketball was about 35% of the job. And I heard someone say that the other day, that because of NIL, that it was about 35% of the job. So it just shows you that no matter what area you're in, there's so many things beyond coaching, but you have to be excellent at coaching in some way, whether it's any of those aspects I described before about the great coaches. They're not all great at everything, but they are all great at something that can make a team great.
Do you have I know it, not a favorite, but someone who in your mind that you could see winding up at Indiana that fits those characteristics? Because I don't know them all, but like we've talked about, Texas Tech, McCaskill, I got his name wrong. McCaslin. I don't know that. I don't think TJ Osberger is an option, just because I think he's entrenched where he is and happy. And it's about, this hire is about timing a lot, much timing. you look at the deal with Dusty May. Timing was last year, was not this year.
Right.
But who's someone that you see as maybe an option or two of really a legit?
I mean, the entrenched thing doesn't bother me because look, he's entrenched with a ceiling, Jim. It's simple as that. I mean, there is a ceiling there. To this point, they've reached Sweet 16s. Could I see this team making a Final Four? Yes, I do think so. I don't think they can win a championship at Iowa State. It's never been done, and it's not likely that anything has changed about the circumstance. Iowa State's a terrific program, but let's be honest. It's still at best 1A in terms of popularity, in terms of public appeal in the state of Iowa. Like if the Hawkeyes are at their best, the players in Iowa still wanted to go there. That's a long-standing history. The Iowa State family, of course, the Hoibergs of the world are going to be oriented toward Iowa State. But if you just get a random kid in Des Moines who's a great player, let's use Caitlin Clark as an example. That player is going to be at least slightly more oriented to Iowa. So I do think that there is a reality of a ceiling there. And does he maybe at some point think, hey, that's one thing I can do and I can be happy there? I don't know whether that's the case or not, but I do think that it's a door. You talk about all these other doors that people want you to open. That's one you should open before any of the others because it might be more realistic, and it would be just as rewarding. If that's not possible, I do believe McCaslin is a possibility. I know that I got a lot of pushback from fans saying he's entrenched in Texas. Yeah, we thought that. We think that about everything until they move. The reality is if they perceive a better opportunity and a better opportunity for them to succeed or to make more money or whatever it is that motivates them, then they will move. And I think that there is a definite ceiling at Texas Tech, that without a doubt, that although you can do a great job there, and Chris Beard had that one run, the ceiling is there. That is not there at Indiana. You're the fifth most popular team in your state. Certainly, the Texas and Texas A&M are bigger than you. So at the very best, you're third. And then Houston has done some great things. They're not as popular as Texas Tech, but they have had more athletic success in basketball. So again, these are the differences in those particular jobs that make Indiana better. And you need to have a better job, not just a better job for that person to get them to move. You say it about Scott Drew. Well, he's an Indiana guy, but he doesn't have that much connection to IU basketball. His father was the coach at Valparaiso. His brother was the star player at Valparaiso. Was he aware of Indiana? Yeah. Would he mind living back in Indiana? Well, probably not, but he's been gone for 20 years, Jim. So it may, and he grew up in northern Indiana, not middle southern Indiana. So I don't know that would be so powerful for him, but that higher ceiling that is there for you if you're Grant McCaslin or someone like that, then I think that I just think that that's somebody that would be gettable.
I agree. Last thing is I've seen a lot of people say something like this, that they think that the IU job is already secretly locked up under the table. And I'm like, people, these guys are working right now. They're under contract. They would have to have permission of the schools to get into that deep of conversations. So I say that no, absolutely not. It's not even close. They may have 5 guys earmarked that they want to really focus on, but nothing is locked up in my opinion.
I mean, let's just use McCaslin as an example. This is a fanciful example, so just go with me. But let's just say that he's the guy you've locked up, so to speak, or that this person thinks would be locked up, okay? So then you get into March, and he goes on a run, and he somehow with this group, and again, this is a very fantastic example, not going to happen. And he wins the national championship. So wait, you were locked up to us. You said you were coming. Yeah, but I just won the national championship. You think I'm leaving that? I just made the Final Four. You think I'm leaving that? These people are going to love me for the rest of my life. So, no, I don't think that is realistic to think that even if you thought that you were in great shape with a candidate, that you can presume that that's done. And again, like you said, you're talking about contractual interference and that sort of thing. No, you can have an agent talking to Indiana and them saying, yeah, we're really interested. We think this would work for us. So, as soon as our season is done, let's get on the plane to wherever. Your place, our place, someplace in the middle, let's do it. But, we can't do it until then. We saw what happened in '89 when Bill Frieder took another job while he was coaching Michigan.
Going to have a Michigan man.
Exactly.
I was thinking about that earlier. Oh, yeah. Bo Schembechler says, we're going to have a Michigan man leading this team, by God.
Exactly.
What is up next for you, sir?
Yes, we will have a bracket today in a little bit. I've got most of the work done. Thanks to Kansas for not blowing the game at Colorado last night because I went to bed. I just wasn't staying up till 1 o'clock in the morning. And I went to bed with them firmly entrenched in their seed and hopeful that they wouldn't blow it and make me rethink that, and they didn't. So I will have a bracket in a little while, working on a lot of different projects for the sporting news. And then Saturday, I'll be back in at Big Ten Network, and we have a busy day. We have 3 games on our air. Very excited about that. And I forgot this afternoon at noon Eastern time. I will be on Big Ten Today with Dave Revson and Rafael Davis discussing my latest bracket that will be published on Fox Sport social media at CBB on Fox.
Got it all locked down, and keep up with everything going on with college basketball through Mike DeCourcy and all of his streams. Appreciate you, sir, as always.
Thanks, Jim.
Thank you. Mike DeCourcy, so kind enough to join us, as usual, here on each Tuesday on Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Up next, Nathan Baird from the Star, the insider for the Purdue Boilermakers, as Matt Painter tries to recapture that magic and get off of that skid as they head down the final stretch. More up after these messages from the Hard Truth Distilling Company Studios. Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue, and you get it for just 0.9% financing, or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition, or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. Ugly Grouper, located on beautiful Anna Maria in Florida, is the place to be, and not just because they have unforgettable meals, including locally sourced seafood. The Ugly Grouper has your favorite craft beers and cocktails, along with live music every day. The Ugly Grouper is family-friendly, able to host private parties, and has the biggest grouper you've ever seen. The Ugly Grouper is the place to be on Anna Maria Island, Florida. Tell them Indiana Sports Beat sent you. Go to theUglyGrouper.com for more information. When it comes to apparel and promotions, Freethink has you covered, literally, whether it's 24 or 200 shirts for sports leagues, businesses, or groups. Freethink Apparel and Promotions can also create your very own merchandising store. Freethink Apparel and Promotions did it for Indiana Sports Beat Radio, and they can do it for you. Whether it's screen printing, embroidery, digital printing, promotional products, vehicle wraps, or anything else under the promotional line. See what Freethink Apparel and Promotions can do for you at freethinkapparel.com. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum. Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the hard truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Tuesday. Grateful to have you along for the ride as always, and grateful to have Nathan Baird joining us from the Indy Star, Purdue's inside beat writer for the Star. Nathan, how are you, brother?
I'm doing good, Jim. How's it going?
If I was any better, I'd be you, man. It's it's getting warmer. It's not 12 degrees outside, and the ground all covered in snow. Although I'm sure you guys up there in West Lafayette got just as much, if not a tick more. But I'm sick of this winter weather, man. I'm done with it.
Yeah, no, actually, I'm down here in Indy. So when it was bad about a month ago, we got the worst of it down here. I was up in West Lafayette. They didn't get a flake, and I came home, and the next morning had to start digging immediately. Actually, I had to dig that night even to get up my driveway. So no, I'm with you.
Purdue is having a great season, but you wouldn't know that if you looked over the last couple of weeks for them, as they have falling on a skid that they haven't seen in 5 years. They've lost 4 straight games now after their most recent loss in Indiana, and that was probably a more troubling loss, but at the same time, it's a rivalry game, so you can't put a whole lot of stock into that, because we just look back to what happened in West Lafayette and how that could have been a sweep for Indiana. But Purdue obviously is solidly in the tournament, and they're solidly probably at worst a 5 seed, probably a 4 seed. So they're going to go into that just fine. And they have the Big Ten tournament coming up that they can try to work some things out. But their schedule seems the remaining, they only have 3 games left. And so the remaining schedule seems to look pretty good as far as I think at worst they go 2-1, but they can easily go 3-0 over these last final 3 games.
I mean, they can, but right now they're just playing some of their worst basketball of the season, frankly. And I think if any of these, it's a 4-game losing streak. Any of those first 3, if you had taken them and sprinkled them out through January and the first couple weeks of February,
they're what you call good losses.
Kind of, or they just don't stand out the same way as they do when they pile up back to back to back. I think the Sunday loss, though, was the most troubling of them, in that it looked like the team that Purdue had kind of left behind in the first half of the season. I mean, they had some games like this, the game at Penn State, the game against Texas Tech, where they were tripping over themselves a little bit and couldn't get out of their own way. People might remember, I mean, Penn State might finish last in the Big Ten, and Purdue was down 27 with under 10 minutes to play in that game. And that was the worst basketball I'd seen them play until Sunday. And maybe it still is, just based, relatively compared to the competition, because Indiana's better than Penn State. But that second half against Indiana, it was just a void of composure and execution and I don't know what other words you want to throw in there. Lots of other nouns. It was a void of those things. So this is a team that it probably has a break at the right time, a small one, where it gets, this whole week, doesn't have a game, a midweek game. It doesn't play again until Friday when UCLA comes to West Lafayette. And UCLA is a really, really good team. They've had some trouble, frankly, going on the road and playing anywhere outside the Pacific time zone until they came and beat Indiana a couple weeks ago. So maybe they're vulnerable, but right now Purdue looks pretty vulnerable too. I don't think they can take anything for granted. And the bigger thing, even if they were to lose Friday, I think you just need to see them start to show competency again in a couple of key areas. The first of which being taking care of the ball again, not giving away points. They won 10 out of 11 games during that stretch. I think they were committing like 9 turnovers a game for about 10 points that the opponent was getting. So, a manageable ratio, and one that they were offsetting by creating a lot of turnovers themselves. So during this losing streak, if you take out the Wisconsin game where they only had a couple of turnovers, but were just bombed away on defensively and couldn't stop Wisconsin at all, those other 3 games, it's more like 13 turnovers a game for like almost 17 points that the other team is getting. And on top of that, you're not getting back and setting a defense. Like, it all kind of folds together. So they really have to take care of the ball better, and they do have to fix some things in their as far as keeping the ball out of the post on defense. It's not really the defense that they're playing once the ball gets there, because they're going to have liabilities there. Once Daniel Jacobson got hurt, they don't have any rim protection. They've been playing with that all season, and we know the foul trouble that Trey Kaufman-Renn can get in. There's only so much you can ask him to do once the ball is in the post. They've got to keep it out of there, and teams have really been exploiting that. They finally hit a stretch of playing the best teams in the conference, and they were the ones who've been able to exploit that the best here the last couple of weeks.
Yeah, and Trey Kaufman-Renn has had a tremendous season, averaging, I think, 19 points. He's very active in his role in a hybrid kind of – he's a stretch 4 mini 5 of sorts, I guess, for lack of a better description, because Purdue is so used to having that legit 5, whether it's one of their old 7-footers that have been on the bench and they've really not been able to bring along yet. Because if they had one of those guys along with Trey Kaufman-Renn out on a wing, that would make them a much more dangerous team, but they're missing that key element. And Sunday's game, Evan Miyakawa put out a chart a week ago. This is before the Indiana-Purdue game. And if you're not following us on YouTube, you can't see this, but he has something he calls the kill shot. And that's anytime a team goes on a run of 10-0 or more. And at the very, very top of that chart is Indiana, in the streaky teams section, and they are by far, and this game against Purdue epitomized this, and this is before that game, but they allowed Purdue to go on a 21-3 run to end the half, and then Indiana starts the half with a 21-1 run. And as you can see at the bottom of those streaky teams, Purdue is sitting in there, but I don't know how streaky they really are, but Michigan also inside of that bubble. So I did not think of Purdue as a streaky team, but I don't follow them as closely as you do. But I know that they've had great success all season until they've hit this streak here. And I don't want to say they've been exposed a little bit, but because Braden Smith is he's going to be an All-American. He's going to set records and that he's already set and more, but he can be shut down. And if you put the emphasis on him, like Indiana was able to keep him in check with a couple of guys, and when you have the interior play, that seems to be the recipe for disaster for Purdue.
Well, yeah, I mean, their offense is really locked up around 2 guys, and then Fletcher Laurie being the 3rd guy, and then they just hope to get efficient play from the other 6 or so guys that they're playing on any given night. And they really got away from that Saturday. Trey Kaufman-Renn didn't have an especially good game. Braden Smith played, I think, arguably his worst game of the year. Now, the flip side of that was, Mike Woodson after the game, I think, said that he thought that was the best defense Miles Rice had played at Indiana, what he did to Braden Smith that day. So it's both sides of the coin, and kind of the same thing as you're talking about with that streakiness. I think there's a fine line between, you want to be a team that puts together runs, and you just don't want to maybe have to depend on those to bail you out every night. Matt Painter talks about kill shots too, but he talks about it only in terms of defense, because you can control, I think, the kill shot on defense a little bit better, which I think they call that's 3 or more stops in a row. And then as it builds towards 5, 6, 7, your chances of winning go up, kind of regardless of what you're doing on offense, because on offense, they are much more process oriented. You're trying to take almost a results independent view of things. Like, did you get a good shot? Sometimes those don't go in. That's what they prioritize. And what you saw on Sunday when Purdue went on that run at the end of the first half, I was counting it. I went back and counted it, but you could tell it was happening in real time. Like, when they went on that run, the thing it felt like they fixed was the defense, because I think it was something like a stretch of 13 stops in 14 possessions for Indiana that Purdue put together. It was like a stretch of 6, and then Indiana got a basket, and then a stretch of 7, or the other way around. And that was where it felt like they had found themselves a little bit again. You thought that was going to be a turning point. Like, okay, they've come out of it. Like, they found the defensive foundation again. Now they're up by 12 in the second half. They can manage this, get a win here, stop the losing streak, and now you build into UCLA. And instead, just a real collapse in the second half, where they got away from what they wanted to do defensively, and Indiana was able to get the ball in the paint too easily, and it just built from there. And on top of them just giving away points, I think the last 2 games, I should say, Indiana and Michigan State, on live ball turnovers that Purdue commits. So not travels and not throwing the ball out of bounds, not an offensive foul, but a live ball turnover where you're giving the ball to the other team. Indiana and Michigan State are something like 13 of 14 from the field in those two situations, and Purdue has fouled them on 4 of those situations. So it really builds up in a game that's in the balance when you're playing the other best teams in the conference, or when you're playing your bitter rival on the road. Like those are going to make the difference, and then some. It's how you come out of those games down double digits or more.
Well, the Boilers' next game is at home against UCLA, a team that has had little to no luck east of the Colorado Rockies, unless they go to Bloomington, which they picked up their first win in like 2 years east of the Rockies. That is a loss that hurt Indiana. That really put them behind the 8 ball, as somehow their NCAA chances are still alive. But this is a game that Purdue has to win. They've got to stop this losing streak. They can't lose at home again. And not that it will only affect their seeding. And I think you had a piece that came out in the Star about how this has impacted Purdue's post-game or postseason fortunes. It would hurt their seeding, but they're out of the picture for the Big Ten championship. I think everybody is, except for Michigan State now, even though Maryland, Wisconsin are just 2 games back. There's just not enough time left. But Purdue can solidify itself a little better, redeem itself now. UCLA would be a good win. Then you've got another home game against Rutgers before they finish the season at Illinois. And Illinois is hurting because they've lost Montez Johnson, so they don't have that interior presence that would cause Purdue problems. Now they do have this 7-foot monster that can knock down 3-point shots, and I don't know who the hell's going to guard him unless one of the 7-footers is brought in off the bench. But the remaining 3 games for Purdue seem to lay out in good fashion.
I mean, we'll see. UCLA is a really well-coached team. I think they look at this game as being significant to them because they're trying to better their seeding too. I mean, you got to remember, at the start of this losing streak, Purdue was in first place in the Big Ten, and they were a 2 seed. If you were to go look at, the bracketmatrix.com or whatever, they were a 2 seed like across the board. In fact, I think there were a couple people who were trying to sneak them onto that 1 line. I think they were, when they did, even though they lost that first game against Michigan, when the NCAA committee put out his first reveal, they were, I think, 7th overall on the seed line, still a solid 2 seed. And you're right. Now they've plummeted now to where there's people that think they might be a 5. They're trying to stay at least on that 4 line. But there's a reason why 4s and 5s are trendy upset picks every year among the power conference teams. And it's because it usually means that they either didn't quite get to a certain level or that they have fallen off of that and they've shown some vulnerabilities. And I think Purdue is playing itself into that conversation. So again, I think Friday is important more than the win and the loss. I think Purdue has to come out and not hurt itself the way it has hurt itself the last couple games, especially as far as taking care of the ball. I know I keep coming back to that, but it really seems like the biggest potential Achilles heel for this team, because the defensive situation is what it is. They're not the 7-4 guy that they were going to play, depend on this year, isn't going to play. So they're always going to have rim protection issues. There's only so much they can do to offset that from a personnel or schematic standpoint. It's going to have to just be playing fundamentally good defense, keeping the ball out of the post in the backcourt. But when they're turning the ball over in live ball situations, they can't win. They will lose to the worst teams in the Big Ten. They have shown it. It is proven. And if they can't solve that, it was last year's biggest issue too, but it didn't hurt them as much. It didn't come up as much because you had that Zach Edey foundation and baseline that you were relying on every night that was giving you a cushion. They just don't have that. Like, as good as Braden Smith are and Trakoff and Wren are, they aren't that kind of player. It's a different dynamic. And when you start turning the ball over the way that they have in a couple of these most concerning losses this season, it certainly makes you wonder what's going to happen in the one and done pressure of an NCAA tournament situation where you're playing another team that is at, maximum motivation as well. So that's the thing that I think you look at over these next 3 games. You get Rutgers in the middle of that. That's one that, again, seems like it should be in their favor, but a team that has talent and just hasn't put it together this year. And then finishing at Illinois, regardless of who they're missing, they still have some talented players, and that's a tough place to play. And it's been a particularly antagonistic place for Purdue to go play in the last few years. And Illinois fans, I grew up in Central Illinois. Illinois fans can be rough and rowdy, and I had pinpointed that game as soon as I saw the schedule come out. I was like, well, if they're in Big Ten championship contention and that last game matters, that's a tough road game to have to end your regular season on. And right now it seems like one that will potentially tell us a lot about where this team is at in terms of its poise, its composure, and just its ability to not get rattled and execute on offense, because that's what they've really gotten away from these last couple games.
Yeah, we saw Illinois this past weekend get absolutely dismantled by a top Duke team, number 2 Duke, 110-67. Now they come back home. Tonight they'll play the Iowa Hawkeyes in a late game, 9:00. And then on Sunday, they travel to Michigan, where Michigan is desperately trying to hold on at the top before heading off to Purdue. And speaking of the Big Ten, it's odd. You've got Michigan tied at the top with Michigan State, but Michigan is ranked like 12th. I don't recall ever in my lifetime that a Big Ten team that was at the top of the standings was not a top 5 team. But that is the case this season. Not only is, I think, Michigan State still the highest ranked team, I don't think they're the best team in the Big Ten. I think that's Wisconsin right now. They're playing as good as anybody.
Yeah, Wisconsin's playing the best of any team in this conference right now. And Purdue saw it firsthand, that game where they came into Mackey Arena and, again, just were borderline like unstoppable on offense. That was a game they were 20 of 22 on 2-point shots. Like you sometimes can't do that against air. How do you do that against an opponent in their gym? And by the way, they shot really well from 3 again that day, which is what they really thrive on. That was an impressive win. Now they just lost at home to Oregon in overtime. So, they have had, some reversals from this. The Big Ten is interesting, to see a team that like Illinois, they've been one of the most schizophrenic teams in the country that clearly has all the talent. And the metrics have loved them all year. And yet they just have not been able to play consistent basketball at all. And losing to Duke on a neutral court is not, nothing to be ashamed of, but getting crushed like that is concerning. It's the same concerns that Purdue, frankly, has had when it's gone up against some really good teams this year, losing to Marquette by 18 in a game where they gave up 18 points off of turnovers, getting just kind of embarrassed by Auburn. And I know that's one of the best teams in the country, but when you're looking at teams that are maybe going to make a NCAA tournament run, those aren't evidence that that's a team that can do that. And I think that's what's most frustrating for people around Purdue right now, concerning for the fans and frustrating for people that around the team, was that, again, in that stretch from December 29th when they beat Toledo at home through February 7th when they beat USC at home, I mean, they were kind of whipping up on people. They had some of those closer games, like you said, the Indiana game. They had that home loss to Ohio State coming off of the West Coast trip. But again, a stretch of 10 out of 11 games, they obliterated Michigan at home. They went on the road and beat Oregon. Like, there were quality wins in that stretch. And it seemed like they had figured things out defensively and stabilized things offensively. And now you started to look at, okay, well, this is a team with a really good coach. It's got the best point guard in the country, and it can play sound defense. Like, you can make an NCAA tournament run with that. And a lot of that stuff has really slipped away here in this 4-game stretch. So what do they do over these next 3 games between now and March 7th that points them back in the direction of being a team that you don't want to play in the NCAA tournament?
Yeah, it's going to be, I'm looking forward to this tournament as always, because college athletics has just changed so much with the NIL and the transfer portal. With there's so much parity now. And I talk about the fact that you look at Kansas, they've got the money, they've got the NIL, they've got the players, but they are not winning.
So it is just leveled the playing field for everyone, and it is fantastic. I love it. And I'm looking forward to it. It will be nicer if Indiana can make a good hire, because it's a hell of a lot more fun covering winning programs than it is to cover programs that are in complete dysfunction nonstop. But it's also good for college basketball, in my opinion, for Indiana to be good, along with Purdue, to have those. The rivalry this year was spectacular. Those two games, even though with Indiana having their problems, the two games were spectacular. They were how they should always be. And that's what makes it great for fans to watch that game. But it's fun for those in the media as well. I mean, trust me, covering teams that suck ain't fun. So
I was here for Purdue football season. Trust me, I'm well aware.
Yeah, let's introduce you a little bit more to the audience. Nathan is with the Indy Star, of course, and we had been having someone else from Purdue on, but it appeared they were just too much of a fan. So we had to make an adjustment, and I'd been wanting to talk to you. I'd never met you, I don't recall, but Zach and Dustin are on with us all the time, but great journalists there. So you always know we're getting great stuff. But how long have you been covering the Boilers?
So people might remember me when I was at the Journal and Courier in Lafayette. I covered Purdue.
I thought so.
Yeah. So 2013-14 was my first season when Purdue lost its last 7 games and finished last in the Big Ten. So I dragged them right down from the start. And then since then, obviously, they went on to return to form. And I was there through the 2019 game, the Elite Eight loss to Virginia and Louisville. And then that summer, I moved to Columbus, Ohio. I've been covering Ohio State football for Cleveland.com for a 5-year stretch, and just came back this past summer. My wife and I are both reporters at the Star, and we both came back this summer. Yeah. So Haley Colombo, who covers government and things like that for our State House team. So we've been back here since last summer, and got to experience what this Purdue football season was this last year, and a coaching change already. And but it's been nice to get back to basketball. I didn't do any basketball at all while I was living in Ohio, and it was getting back. And that Alabama game at Mackey Arena earlier this year, where you're watching from up high, and it's so loud in there that the action on the court just stops, and you don't understand why, because you couldn't hear the whistle, like stuff like that. It's been nice to get back to that sort of Big Ten basketball experience and sort of immerse in that again. And I've been enjoying it. And it's been a rough stretch for Purdue here, but the NCAA tournament always, and nobody needs to hear this less than Purdue fans, I should say. Like, they've seen the ups and downs of the NCAA tournament for sure, depending, regardless of where they're seated. And the NCAA tournament brings a whole new level of a whole different atmosphere, a whole different urgency. And if this team can get things corrected, maybe it can be at least a second weekend team again. But right now, it's just got to correct things from a fundamental standpoint, and in order to just remove some of those vulnerabilities that people are exploiting so easily right now.
And I'm looking forward. Well, we've got the Big Ten tournament coming up in not too long. Yep. I forget when does that thing start? March? Is that the second week of March, I think?
Yeah. So March 7th is Purdue's last game. That's a Friday. And then the tournament, I think, will start
Sunday.
The first playing games. And then
7,
Purdue
8,
would probably
9,
play
10,
either Wednesday or Thursday.
They're about the 11th or the 12th. I think it's the 12th on a Wednesday. Only 18 teams. Yesterday, I kept saying 20 teams in the Big Ten. I was thinking the 20-game schedule, people. So Rufo reminded me of that later. But of the 18 teams, only 15 make it in. And those teams have pretty much kind of cemented who they are. Washington is proudly bringing up the rear at 4-12 in conference play, and Penn State next at 5-12, which means they're most likely not getting in, as well as Northwestern. You do have USC, Minnesota, Iowa, all with only 6 wins as well. So there probably might be a couple swaps there, but other than that, Rutgers is going to be in the tournament. Ohio State, Nebraska, Indiana, those teams. It
it'll be interesting to see if any of those teams, Illinois or Nebraska and Indiana and Ohio State, both need to make a little hay in the Big Ten tournament. Indiana has to finish their season strong. They have 4 games remaining, and 3-1 they should definitely go. But if they could beat Oregon, that would probably put them over if they were able to do that and then put them in prior to the Big Ten tournament, because you don't want to go into the Big Ten tournament hoping to get to the play-in game like they did a few years back.
Yeah, and if they can get to 10-10, I think that probably helps their cause. Just because this conference is, even if it isn't as top heavy, I think it's still respected from a depth of talent. The thing about this Purdue UCLA game on Friday too, these are 2 teams that could both still end up with a double bye if they were to win out, depending on what happens with Maryland and I suppose Wisconsin too. Purdue is right on that bubble. And I think there's value in getting into that top 4 and playing that double bye. I think especially for a team like Purdue right now, I don't know if they need some random game against Nebraska or whatever more than they maybe need to work on some things. And maybe things change between now and, again, when we come out of Illinois game, looking at this team differently. But there's still something to be played for, even if they can't win the Big Ten championship here in this last week and a half. I think if they can make a surge, if you start to get some momentum back, but more importantly, just start to play better, you can also, help yourself with this seeding, help solidify your NCAA tournament seeding, give yourself just a stronger footing as you go into March.
Well, and I'll tell you, the teams that at the top, Michigan State, I'll have to pull up Michigan's schedule here in a minute, but Michigan State has 4 games remaining. But not only do they have 4 games remaining, tomorrow night, they head to Maryland, one of the hotter teams in the Big Ten. Then they come back home to take on Wisconsin, one of the hottest teams in the Big Ten, if not the hottest. Then they travel to Iowa, which shouldn't be much of an issue. But then they come back home to take on Michigan. So they've got to play 3 ranked teams in their final 4 games. I was thinking Michigan State was going to kind of have the inside track to winning that title, but they've got a tough road to hoe if they can get through that schedule. They deserve to win that. Meanwhile, Michigan hosts Rutgers. They will host Illinois. They host, they got 3 home games in a row. Then they host Maryland before traveling to Michigan State. So not an easy schedule, but they've got it at home. And so they have an easier schedule. Man, that may give the tip to Michigan. That's just going to be fun.
Yeah, I wasn't sure how exactly this was going to shake out at the start of the year. If you go back and look at the preseason media poll that was out there, I think Indiana, Purdue was picked number 1. I think Indiana was number 2 or number 3. UCLA was really high up there, and it's interesting how this thing is flopped or flipped. And Wisconsin was a team that the way it started early this year. Back in December, it lost both of its Big Ten games. It lost to Michigan at home. It lost at Illinois. And you thought maybe this was a team that was, had a certain ceiling that maybe it wasn't going to get to this year. And since then, it had been on a real roll. Like, it had a 2-point loss at UCLA. It lost at Maryland. But then those are the only 2 losses it had in Big Ten play until this overtime home loss to Oregon. Wisconsin is a talented team. I don't know if they aren't still somewhat vulnerable defensively. Purdue actually had a really good offensive game in that game at Mackey a couple weeks ago that Wisconsin won. And Wisconsin just had such an insanely high offensive performance that it was able to overcome that. It's not going to do that every night. So I think there are probably some things it wants to shore up defensively going into the tournament. But this isn't like a Purdue team of the past, going in as a 1 seed out of the Big Ten this year. You're not going to have a team that, like when Wisconsin had Frank Kaminsky or some of these Michigan teams in recent years, or certainly some of Izzo's best Michigan State teams, where they can get in and they're considered a favorite going into the tournament. I think it is an interesting year, though, for Big Ten teams to maybe just get the right matchups and be able to make a push, because there is talent here. I just think that as an any NCAA tournament, the matchups that you get are going to be more critical in some ways than how good you are.
Yeah, it's going to be fun and entertaining. Last thing, which I know you don't cover IU that much, but Indiana looking for a new coach all during this time as well, while they're trying to fight to get into the NCAA tournament. Which, first of all, the sheer fact that they still have a shot at that, I shake my head, but they do. Well, but it's up to them to get that done. But Dusty May off the table, obviously that would have been a perfect fit for Indiana, but they waited a year too late to do that. There are other names out there being batted around, but now with the preeminent guys kind of off the table, and Chris Beard is not someone I think Indiana is just going to. That's just not something I think is going to happen. So, man, I'm really like, okay, who's that second first call after Dusty, and I don't know. It's going to be a curious time to see how that plays out.
Yeah, a lot of people around Indiana, and certainly just people who cover college basketball and see this dynamic, I think they keep coming back to the same thing, which is like, well, Indiana needs to find its Matt Painter. So I think Indiana's had something like 6 head coaches since Matt Painter became the head coach at Purdue. And it's not like, that's not a job where people are leaving for better jobs. It's people are going there and getting fired. So sometimes without having really any success at all. So I think there's some truth to that, but you got to remember Matt Painter was allowed to sort of become Matt Painter. He came in, had 1 year of head coach experience at Southern Illinois, came in and had that transitional year with Gene Cady, had a bad year his first year, but all of that allowed him to focus on recruiting that baby boiler class. And that was what, gave this program as it exists now, its foundation, and something they were able to build on long-term. And I think if you're at IU and you're expecting to grab a hot name and have that person just go out and grab a handful of transfers every year and expect that mix to work, I think we've seen this year that, until recently when they started winning the right kind of games, it looked like it had completely imploded under this example. And they've got to find someone. Okay, go find your Matt Painter, but then actually let them become Matt Painter. Let them be the voice that runs the ship there when it comes to basketball. Because I don't think there's no question at Purdue who is the head of basketball there. Matt Painter doesn't have to deal with a lot of interference and a lot of annoying influence. He's the guy. And you've got to find your guy from a culture standpoint and put your trust in him and let him grow that. And if you're looking for a quick fix, something that catapults you back to the very top of college basketball, I don't think that's realistic. I think you need to go find the person who's going to plant the seed for something sustainable to grow at IU. And for whatever reason, they haven't been able to find that. I think in the couple of cases, they've tried to go with a certain optic as opposed to maybe just finding the very best guy for that. And the names that people keep throwing around at the top of the wish list, people like Brad Stevens and Dusty May, I think that describes those guys. So why aren't those guys more interested in coming to Indiana? There are reasons that maybe aren't Indiana specific for that. Then maybe they're just happy where they are. And in Brad Stevens' case, people I've talked to, it certainly doesn't sound like he's that interested in never coming back to college basketball.
Well, Brad Stevens was a pipe dream the whole time. I kept trying to tell people
exactly.
He has one of the most premier jobs in all of sports. He's not going to take a pay cut to take a college coaching job, which requires more work, more stress than he enjoys right now. Why would you?
Right.
He's not. With Dusty May, it was timing. They had a shot last year and they did not pull the trigger.
What I'm saying is that those are both examples of guys who I think are secure in their ability to come in and have a culture that is built around them. Like they are it's not just a name only thing. Like the program is them. Like when Brad Stevens was a Butler, that program was him. We saw what Dusty May did at FAU and what he's now started at Michigan, even though he did do it with transfers this year. An important one was one he brought with him from FAU. So there's those are the guys who I think can come in and establish a culture long term. And I think Indiana needs to get away from worrying about its brand and who fits that, and find a person who maybe is a departure from the comfort zone that IU is used to working in, and let that be what grows there, and let that person become a Matt Painter over time. Don't expect them to be that as when they walk through the door. It's a thing that a young coach especially would have to grow in over time. So look around college basketball to people who maybe at not the first place you would look have started to do that, and get that guy and then really, support him, but don't get in his way, and let that grow the way it's supposed to grow.
Sounds very eerily to something Matt Painter said over the weekend to a lot of IU fans, and they should probably take heed to that. But absolutely, Nathan, I cannot thank you enough. I look forward to hopefully doing this again, as the peeps love you, and make sure you are giving Nathan a follow and keeping up with all of his coverage at the Indy Star, especially if you're a Boiler fan or just college basketball in general, to keep up on what's happening in the Big Ten. Nathan, I appreciate you, my friend.
Thanks, Jim.
You betcha. We've got more coming up. We've got to take a quick break. Back with more from the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios right after this. Located on 325 acres in beautiful Brown County, Indiana, Hard Truth Distilling Company is the biggest and the best craft distillery around. While Hard Truth is already known for producing internationally awarded whiskeys and spirits like Hard Truth's sour mash bourbons, sweet mash, and hard road ryes, as well as their cinnamon vodka and the always popular toasted coconut rum, Hard Truth Distillery offers so much more. With a full-service restaurant, ATV, and distillery tours, as well as live music, you can spend an entire day at Hard Truth Distillery while making your entire family or group happy. And that's the Hard Truth. Hard Truth products are available across Indiana, as well as many other states. So no matter where you shop, if they don't carry your favorite Hard Truth product, tell them you want the truth, the Hard Truth. Hard Truth Distilling Company encourages you to enjoy all of their products responsibly and to never drink and drive. If you're looking for a new home in the Indianapolis area, you need Cheryl Sizemore from Brick and Ivy Realty. Cheryl Sizemore has over 2 decades of experience, and that could be the difference in getting the home you want in today's tough housing market. Reach out to Cheryl at CherylSizemoreSells@gmail.com or 317-701-0838. That's 317-701-0838. Let Cheryl Sizemore sell or find your new home today. Whether it's a night out with the family, after work with colleagues, or catching the game with friends, Bubba's 33 is the place for you. Bubba's 33 offers a mouthwatering menu of selections that are all made from scratch every day. The portions are big, but the prices are small. And with over 50 big screen TVs, you'll never miss the big game. Bubba's 33, pizza, burgers, beer. Andy Moore Honda is Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer for a reason. Buy a new Honda and get a 3-month break from car payments. That's right, no payments for 90 days. That includes the all-new, all-electric Honda Prologue, and you get it for just 0.9% financing. Or the 2024 Honda Ridgeline Black Edition or the Honda Accord LX, both for just 1.9% financing. Get more to your door from AndyMooreHonda.com, Bloomington's #1 Honda dealer and your best place for new and used vehicles. Welcome back to the Hard Truth Distilling Company studios on this Tuesday. So grateful to have you along with us. It was a fun day. Mike DeCourcy joining us early, and Nathan Baird from the Indy Star, the Purdue Insider. Great conversation talking to him. Looking forward to doing that each week. A little bit more civil and professional, which is what we always want to bring to you here. Man, I hope you get out and enjoy the day. It's not going to be bad. Snow's kind of gone. It's warming up. I'm going to have to enjoy it a little bit. We're back tomorrow, of course, with Rick Bozich, Dylan Sin from the Fort Wayne Journal-Gazette, and Kyle Nedrip as the IHA boys basketball tournament about to get underway. We're getting close to Tournament City, baby. Boys basketball in high school. We've got the NCAA or the conference tournaments on deck next, followed by the NCAA tournament
after that. Been a great day. Cannot thank you guys enough. As always, you are the best. Thank you so much for the chatters in the chat room. We're going to come up with a unique name for you guys instead of just the chatters. But appreciate you as always. We're back tomorrow. Until then, I am Jim Coyle. I will see you on the radio.
Thanks for listening to Indiana Sports Beat Radio. Be sure to subscribe to our YouTube page for more clips and team coverage of Indiana basketball, football, and more. You can also find full episodes and tons of other content on thehoosier.com. We'll see you next time for another edition of Indiana Sports Beat Radio.